Hi, I'm Daniel Dubois,
And I'm Michaela Gaffinstone.
and we're your hosts for the Think Like a Wizard podcast. Welcome to season 2, episode 3, part 2. We're going to kick off where we're going to continue the discussion we were having. And that episode wasn't as long as we normally do, so might as well throw part 2 in just to continue on.
Yeah, we definitely hadn't finished last time. It was just a necessary disruption
Yeah,
that life sometimes does. So, yeah, but we were in the flow.
we were. That's why it was sad to break. I was even going to let you keep going, but then I was like, oh, no, she has to leave. So I was like, I better say something. Because I could
Yeah,
feel you were
yeah,
going, you were there, you were in there, and I could see it in your face. And I'm like, I don't want to stop, but we got to.
yeah. That happens sometimes, right? And then, if you can get back to it soon enough, you can pick it up again. But
Yeah.
we were talking about how people come into your life and contribute something, and
Right.
that may not be comfortable at the time. It may not look like a good thing, but what comes out of that can be groundbreaking. It can be so good. So getting hung up on the person rather than the flow that you're in can be a
Mm-hmm.
big distraction, I think.
Yeah, and because it made me think about like, so my main thing as a wizard is basically I'm basically the what do you call it? The what's the word I'm looking for? Open-ended is not correct, but something similar. I basically, if the spirits I work with need to do something, I'm like, whatever it is, let's just do it. Okay, I'm there. And frankly, and this goes back to actually my twin flame, is that for her, that's my when I mentioned before that I did 20 years of channeling non pretty much continuously, it was in that connection to her, even though I was still channeling even after she had died. But what I'm trying to say that is like, so in the experience of having your flow directed by someone outside, because we were talking about love spells, the thing is, a part of you is shut off, or a part of you is directed away from your own concerns. Like now that I'm done, I'm like, oh, I got all these things I have to catch up on to. I have to like, not restore relationships, but they have not been taken care of as well as they should be. My own finances, frankly, even my health for that matter. I was never allowed to dip so far that, I was in any danger, but still, like for a guy who used to be an athlete, it's like I've fallen far enough.
Right.
So trying to impose your will on someone is not the best way because when you impose that will on someone, that person now can't take care of their own things because they're stuck in that. In fact, that's usually how I know when I'm done channeling for someone is because suddenly it's like the weight of the world is lifted off my shoulders, and all of a sudden it's like, oh crap, I forgot all about this stuff. There's all these things I didn't work on.
Right. Now you can breathe. But
Right,
yeah, the doing spells to affect somebody else's direction is a big responsibility.
right.
And it's something that, you got to be very clear on your motives for
Mm-hmm,
this. And something like a love spell,
mm-hmm,
frankly, is unlikely to be a sufficiently good motive
right,
to warrant the risk you're taking with this. Because, when you start messing with somebody else's free will, there are repercussions from that.
yeah,
And what that looks like, well, it depends, right? And that's the thing. You cannot know what it's going to look like, but you can be pretty sure there's going to be something. And it's just, personally, I wouldn't want to do that. I wouldn't want to take that on. I don't want responsibility for affecting somebody else in that very intentional and occult way. And I mean
mm-hmm,
occult in the literal meaning of the word hidden, right? You are
right,
doing this in a subterfuge kind of way. So this person doesn't know that you're working on them that way. And here's the other part to that is say you do this love spell and it
Mhm.
works, and this person's like just smitten with you and they're there for you and all of this, you will never know if that was you or if that was your spell.
That's right.
And that in itself could be a bit of a curse, right?
Mm.
Because you're never quite sure, would they be here if I hadn't done that? And does that make a difference to you? Probably. Really, if a person's not there of their own free will, then how good is that really?
Mm.
So there's a lot of issues that come up around affecting somebody else's free will and affecting their path. That's a big thing for you to take on. Whereas, I had mentioned before the sort of return to sender
Right.
spells. When somebody's sending something at you that's going to be disruptive and negative and you don't want it, which of course you wouldn't, then putting up a mirror essentially and saying, this is not mine, you can have it back, that's fine. You're not altering their path, you're giving it back to them. And
Right.
that's a very different thing, a very different motivation. You're preventing harm to yourself, which is something that we should do. But going out of your way to change somebody else's direction is problematic.
Right. And from a we'll say it because I haven't said it in a while, but in the wizard sense, the mechanics, right? So the minute you start interfering with someone else's, like one, you're not the one doing the action, but the spirit you've invoked to curtail someone else is still using your energy because that's the price you pay for the spell in the first place. But because this is ongoing, you're always giving away a bit of yourself. So even when you cast a spell for an ongoing spell, you're harming yourself in the long run as well because now you don't have the energy to do everything you want to do. And
Yeah, that's such a good point. That's really key, I think, to consider in that whole sort of area, because sometimes I belong to a few witch groups.
right,
One might be a coven, the others are witch groups. Um, and there's definitely a difference of intent there. But I will often see people that are coming in with requests for certain spells or give me this information so I can do the thing. And where they're coming from is a place of emotion. And
right,
it's usually an emotion of turmoil. It's not a calm kind of emotion that they bring in. And that is an awful place to work from. You're not in control of
right,
yourself, let alone anything else that you're doing. And coming from that kind of variability and then trying to project that onto somebody,
right.
you're just in for so much difficulty there that it's not a judgment thing like I think that's bad or that's wrong. It's just more, man, that's hazardous. Are you sure you want to do that? I
Well, and
would
that's the
question
thing,
it.
right? Because then there's even the other consequences. Like, because depending on the person you're targeting and the spirits they work with, those spirits might have something to say about what's going on. And whereas
That's
they may not be
true.
strong enough to stop the spirit you invoked, doesn't mean they can't do things in the background. Doesn't mean they can't take retaliation either. Like
That's
it's things
true.
I never used to think about before until I was in this position of not casting spells because I don't. Because that again, the way I work with spirits, it's if something needs to be done, they need to do something. I'm like, okay, I'm your guy. But I don't usually ask for much in return other than some insight every once in a while on something.
Right. But I mean, really the motivation is key
Mm-hmm.
to anything you're going to do because intent is everything. That will guide how it's received. And, just think I mentioned return to sender a few
Right.
times now. So if the person you're working on happens to know something about what they're doing, and understand
Mm-hmm.
witchcraft, then they will know you are interfering and they
Right.
might do a return to sender. Are you prepared for that? Because when that comes back at you,
That's right.
it's a big thing. It tends to be a magnifying mirror, not just a regular mirror. So, you're getting a big result coming back at you that you then have to handle. So, my advice would be don't dish what you can't serve.
That's right.
If you're not going to handle it coming back, don't put it out there.
Well, that's the thing, right? That's where I think so you're spending the energy to do the spell, so it's energy you don't have access to, but now you're dealing with the consequences, which takes more of your energy. So even I would argue in the long run, because you're never completely whole anyways, you can't even appreciate the relationship you're in. Even if you had the mindset of it doesn't matter what I do as long as the person loves me by whatever means, you're still never going to be to fully be immersed in it because a part of you is always being drained away. So you
Right.
can't do anything 100% ever again, to be honest. Like we always give our energy away for whatever we're doing, but this is an energy you can't recoup because you have to keep putting that energy in as long as that person's alive. So it's a permanent source of drain on you.
And you really do need to conserve energy. Like we need to be more mindful of that. And I think that's something, there's so much noise and bright lights and what have you in today's world. There's so many distractions that we forget to kind of center ourselves and keep our energy, keep the core energy going. We put
Mhm.
too much out there. I was very recently doing a podcast with someone where we were talking about social media and how that affects people. Well, you could just for fun put a sentence up on your Facebook page, for example, and if it's a little bit controversial, I don't know, say something political, for example,
Mhm.
pick a side, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But you just put something up there, and the world and his dog's going to jump in there with comments, and they're going to be yelling at you and calling names and all kinds of things, giving their energy away left, right, and center. And they don't even know who you are, probably, or have any expectation that the energy they're putting out is going to be received in any kind of way. But people do it. They don't just say, I don't know this person, but I don't agree with them, and then move on. No, no, no. They're going to jump in and give
Mhm.
you all this energy, and it's very negative energy. And what happened? So people are leaking all over the place. They're
Yeah.
like sieves. They're just leaking energy everywhere. No wonder people are not well.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? Like, I think, I don't know how to put that. Not to say it's a danger, but I mean, in a very real sense, if you're not in control of your energy, then someone else can grab control of it. Like, I'm trying to remember if I mentioned it in the podcast or if we were just talking, but I had mentioned before that, like, when I was still, I was think it was in middle school, and getting ready for a race, and everyone was cheering on this one person, and I said, you know what? Screw that. I'm taking that energy, and I took it for myself.
Right.
So because people are projecting, but they don't know how to control it. So it's like, yes, their well wishes made it so that they directed their energy at that person that they were focusing on. But not that I was super skilled back in that day, but I at that point still had a sense of, well, it's energy being given away. So what's to stop you from taking it since no one is directly like donating it, they're just putting it out there.
Exactly.
And so if the person can't receive it, doesn't know how to receive it, you know, you don't know where that energy goes. So I took it and used it for
Absolutely.
myself.
No, you can totally do that, and there's nothing to say you can't or shouldn't or any of those things because as you said, it's freely given. And if the person that it was aimed at can't receive it, then hey, it's up for grabs, right? So you got to be careful putting that stuff out there too. It's like,
So
are
when you're
you
freely
really
giving, and
sure? Are you sure that's where you want to spend your most precious currency?
well, and that's true. It is very, very special currency.
Hmm.
And it's weird, right? Like almost to get into this, like now we are speaking like witches and wizards do in a very like, and I hope the listeners can really appreciate how we're getting into this. Because true, your energy that you're giving off, like I said, I've with my trickster teacher, I've learned all like they went my trickster teacher went into the in and outs of not like, we didn't sit down and he told me stories. He just put me through scenarios and where I had to pick it up and go, oh, what's going on here? Oh, that's what's happening. That kind of thing. So that it was cemented in me because I had to figure out, well, because it was like, here's a bad situation. You are now going to be depleted, whether you like it or not. So you better figure out how to, you know, how to deal with the situation. So I did. But yeah, like you're giving away energy for free. Depending what you're giving it to, like I've shared in the podcast and before you came on, like there are entities, like I said, a fear eater as an example. There was one that came to me and had all the good intentions in the world, and all it needed from me in exchange was the energy I was giving off when I was afraid. I said, "Fine, you're helping me with something, the task, so that's the payment." But then I had other ones who, while they were being used by someone to help me, they themselves, as far as they were concerned, they were going to eat every little bit of fear I had and make more if they had to.
Right.
Well, you don't know what you're giving off, really,
Yeah.
or who
And
you're giving it to.
And the idea of that's not to scare anyone, but more to make an awareness
That's right.
that, be mindfulness is bandied about an awful lot these days.
Hmm.
And so, as with all words that get overused, it falls into disuse, if you will.
Right.
People misunderstand what mindfulness is, but really, mindfulness is slowing down enough to be aware of where you are in time and space, if you will, because that's the only thing that matters, actually. You are the main role player in your movie, and everybody else has bit parts. And you have to be in control of your role, your place in that movie, because that's the
Right.
only thing you can control. And your energy is your currency, it's your lifeblood. So if you're liberal with it and just sending it everywhere willy-nilly because you don't take the time to master yourself to be in control of this,
Mm.
then you're doing yourself a disservice and cannot enjoy fully what's available to you. And so you never know what you're going to discover when you slow down enough.
Yeah. And it's funny because, you know, there's a whole world of, well, not just people, but, entities. I added people in there because you have absolutely entities who know what they're doing, but you have people who don't know what they're doing and they feed. The tradition, you get the idea of the psychic vampire, the person you're around that's so draining. But some of those people I've noticed is that they're not necessarily ill-intentioned. They're just, for lack of a better way of putting it, they're in pain and they don't know how to react. So they're taking from their environment anything they can get for themselves. And
I have had an energy vampire in my environment, and wow, that is an experience that I hope not to repeat because this person was insatiable for draining everybody's energy. It was utterly exhausting to be around that person. And I do not think there was any ill intent there, but something was operating. I don't know that it was even that person. I think it was entities with that person that were operating. They were malevolently draining everything around, just like sucking in like a black hole. It was incredible. And I would be exhausted in a very short space of time. And as I mentioned that subject, my clock turns to 222. So I'm just going to put that out there.
right.
But yeah, it's energy vampires are real. And if you come across one, you'll know. You'll really know it. And it's just you got to extricate yourself from that
Right.
when you can. Otherwise, you are just going to go downhill. Health, energy, even your mental well-being gets
Mhm.
drained.
And it's funny because I'm not even just mentioning that as a warning to people, but you yourself could become like, because you can be born an energy vampire or whatever, but sometimes it's just an illness you pick up along the lines, a spiritual illness you pick up along the lines. And until you heal your spiritual illness, your spiritual pain, your spiritual damage, you're drawing from other people. So you might find a part of your life where you're having a hard time connecting with people. It's because you're draining them, because your pain that you're not dealing with is pulling it out of other people. I've seen that
Right.
enough times in my life. It's like, if you understood what you were doing, you wouldn't be having this hard time, or at least you'd be on your way to fixing your hard time.
Or you could be. I mean, I know someone who is an energy vampire and they know it,
Mm-hmm.
and they kind of embrace that part of themselves. And it's like, well, that's cool, and you can be where you are, and I'm going to be over here,
Right.
and we can keep a good distance because I can't and don't want to handle that. And I don't want to be in a position where I have to do return to senders and stuff. Like the ideal is that your practice, speaking as witches and wizards do,
Mm-hmm.
the ideal is that your practice is your practice. It's what you're doing and it affects you. When you start involving other people, that becomes a more difficult thing to regulate, if you will. And I prefer not to if I don't really absolutely have to. So, if I can control things by mundane means, I will.
Yeah, and that's because we are in a. I don't usually use word mundane. Well, I do use word mundane. I don't use it in the fact, like, sometimes people use it as kind of as an insult because it's what's
No,
so
it's
mundane
just
is so normal.
non
You're right.
non-witchcraft, right?
Yeah. And
Non-wizard.
there's a lot of solutions in that way. Like it's funny, if there's one thing I've learned over the years having a trickster teacher is that a lot of the things that we consider just normal ways of dealing with things have magical side to them. Like I'll say like this, the same thing you use to deal with your psychological issues when you go to a therapist are also used to help strengthen you against this kind of incursion or this kind of intrusion because you need to be strong in your character so your energy flows best when you're strong about who you are.
That's true. If you're not distracted also, and if you're not on wobbly
Mm-hmm.
foundations, then you can channel and you can basically be who you are and who you came to be in a much more effective way. So yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, it's interesting how much everything overlaps. That was one of the big lessons I learned. There's a lot of things overlap. And it almost makes me wish like there, and maybe there is, I didn't really look into it, but like if there were therapists for people who have spiritual awakenings, because it's like,
Oh, I'm sure there are.
yeah, because you still need that care because the simple, the foundational things are still there, right? You still might have fear, you still might feel depressed, you still might feel alone. All those things, your mundane therapies can still work on those and help
Oh
you
yeah.
through.
No, in fact, if anybody's interested in talking to somebody like that, just let me know, and I have sources. I can go find you
Yeah.
someone. I'm pretty sure that that would be pretty easy to do.
Mm.
You know, I can't vouch for how good they are at what they do, but I know a place to find these people.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, because that's an interesting thing. Because I used to think about it sometimes. I'm like, for the stuff I'm going through, I'm like, it would be nice to sit with a therapist, but then I'd have to think like, okay, do they believe in this kind of stuff in the first place? Because then if not, that's a whole other thing that becomes harmful over top of helpful. But the tools they have are helpful, but because of they don't accept this kind of stuff, then it'll become harmful because now you're trying to then treat my nature as an illness versus my problem as the illness.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm absolutely certain that there are people that would fulfill that role. It's just a question of knowing where to find them. And like I said, I have a bunch of sources that I kind of play in, and I feel confident that I would be able to find somebody that would fit that bill. I just don't know how good they are as a therapist, and you know,
Mm,
one therapist is not like the next. So you'd need to sort of investigate their references, if you will, find out from other people. And I know that's a confidentiality issue, but
mm,
usually there's someone who will say, I'm happy to speak up and say what my experience was. And that's what you need to find. Um, but yeah, we live in a world that's not as clearly marked out as we like to think it is. It is all overlapping, and that's how it needs to be. You know, it's just people don't tend to recognize it that way and get a little upset if you suggest that that's the
mm.
case. But I suspect they're not listening to this podcast, so we're probably all
No,
right.
probably not. But it is interesting, right? Because it's one of the things for years I've been thinking about. Because it's like you can have both a mental illness and have an entity bothering you. Because
Oh
the
yeah,
entity is probably coming because your mental illness is making you easy to feed off of.
sure.
So it's like, okay, so the therapy part for your mental illness, whatever it is, would help you. But because, but I will say, like, there are some therapists who do accept like UFO abductees and give them the full, yes, they go in with the whole, yes, you were abducted. We're not here to question that. And then they give them the therapy according to their abduction. I know for some that I've heard of, they look at it, well, regardless of whether it's true or not, something happened to this person
Right.
because they're have issues surrounding it. So whether or not that's the exact thing that happened to them, they still need the therapy for that perception. Or as I
Yeah.
like to tell people, you don't fight the delusion if there's a delusion because the delusion is the subconscious mind telling you what, telling everyone what they need, telling like is telling you what the person needs. That's why they had that
Right.
delusion. Like,
And the thing is, I think for a therapist to spend time trying to decide if they believe a person or
mm,
not, they've already lost their path at that point because it doesn't matter if you believe them or not. The question is, what are they coping with right now,
mm,
and how can you help? And that's the therapist's role. I mean, I'm a board certified behavior analyst,
mm,
and so people don't typically expect me to be in platforms like this one, for
Right.
example, because they're like, wait, what? You do science? I do. Yes, you're right. I have some degrees in that. And it means nothing about what I'm doing right now. Like the two things coexist perfectly well. There's nothing wrong
Well,
with
that,
that.
yeah.
Um, so when it comes to therapy, it doesn't matter whether you believe the same things the person believes. What matters is how can you help them be in a more functional space that works for them? That's
Hmm.
basically it. That's what your job is. And if you sidetrack yourself with figuring out whether you believe things or not, well, you're wasting your energy again. It's another energy leak. Like, it doesn't matter if you believe it. Who cares? It's not
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, that's the thing. You deal with the issue presented, and then and yeah, that thing in and of itself, like, okay, the person had some kind of stress. Well, if you alleviate the stress, then if it is a delusion, then you'll know because the brain will start, that will start healing because you've alleviated the stress caused on by the delusion. So it's not the complete way of saying it, but at the moment, I can't think of the complete way of saying it. But yeah, you
That's
start
okay.
with what's presented and then you work your way in if there is something else.
Yeah. And I mean, basically, where is the problem? Let's focus on that and fix that. And that's all you need to do. The whys and wherefores aren't significant unless they are significant, in which
Yeah,
case you'll get there.
right.
But typically speaking, that's not the biggest piece you need to work on. The thing you need to work on is what do we have in front of us now? And if there's something that's causing a repetition, then you're going to go and work on that.
Hmm.
But otherwise, you only work on what's your business to work on, if you will.
Right. You know,
And
and it
I
makes,
think that goes for things magical as well. Work on what's your business. Don't work
yeah.
on other people's stuff.
Well, and that's the thing, right? It's funny because for the last few years, I've been thinking about it because I was coming, like, I was kind of really starting to burn out there and I was coming to the end of my channeling session. Like, I stopped at Christmas time, just past Christmas, doing that 20-year channel. But I was starting to get into you know what? I'm so busy channeling for you guys. Like, I mean, if I'm a wizard, like you tell me, let's do some wizard stuff, like for me, right? And so I'm like, okay, we're gonna do something. I go, there's a rock there. Let's move the rock. Let's do telekinesis, right? I keep hearing people that are doing telekinesis, and the first response is, "Why do you want to move the rock? Where does the rock need to be? Isn't that where the rock wants to be?" And I'm like, well, probably. And they're like, well, then why do you want to move it? Like, is there a value in moving that rock? And I'm like, well, other than showing me it can be done, no. They're like, fine. There's your answer. It's not getting done. I'm
Right.
like, geez. But it made me think, right? I would have wasted energy on that. Maybe that rock needed to be there. It's actually a big thing when you start dealing with these forces. It's what are the consequences of my behavior?
Exactly.
And that was kind of one of their lessons. It's like, think about the consequences right now of what you're asking. Think about, do you need to move it? They're like, if you really needed to move it, we'd move it for you. But it doesn't need to be moved. Plus there is do you have the energy anyways to move it? With everything I was doing for them, to like, do you have even the energy left over to move it anyways? Because we're using your energy to do it. So if you don't have the energy anyways, why are you asking for it?
Yeah, and sometimes, you want a sign of something
Hmm.
or you want to see
Right.
a thing so that that will enable your belief.
Hmm.
But belief is like it requires a little bit more um uncertainty than that.
Well, and that's the
It's
thing, yeah.
yeah. So
Because
if
they were just
you
treating it
move
like
if
they
you
were
move
treating
the
me like,
rock,
okay, listen, you're like, you're down right now, so you want something to pick you up, and you just want to see if you can do something. But then they remind me, like, it's not you doing it, it's us doing it. So that doesn't change that. And you already work with us, and you've been working with us like for pretty much your whole life. So there's nothing we can do moving that rock that's going to benefit you other than drain more energy from you. And I'm like,
right?
you know what? That makes sense.
And chances are, if you moved the rock, at some point you'd start to question whether that really happened
Well,
or
and that's the other
not.
one,
And then you need to do it again. And
right?
so now you're focusing an awful lot of energy on repeating something that isn't really necessary. And key, it's not moving anything forward
Right.
because you're still at the same place of, well, I need a bit more evidence. I'm not sure that
Mhm.
I actually saw that. That wasn't big enough. It didn't like do a Hollywood movie thing where it comes up and hovers and then
Well, that's
winks
the
at
thing.
you and floats off someplace. It's like it just moved a couple of millimeters. Well, did it really, or was I imagining that?
Yeah.
You start getting into that, and that in itself is like a black hole of madness, right? It can just drain your energy into this thing that's not really got any point. Nothing's going to improve because of it. So, yeah, I can see how you would be interested in that and also not given it at the same time.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. Like, because, and even though I seen this in a cartoon, it's still interesting. Power you get when you're afraid is power you're going to have that's going to be governed by fear.
Hmm.
So if you're not fully prepared, if you're not fully in your right sense of self when you try something like this, going forward, you're not going to be able to continue to operate. It's going to take more lessons and it's going to be harder lessons because now you're tapping into stuff that's more powerful than you, or not necessarily more powerfully, but that are now putting you in a world that you're not used to. And now you have to navigate that world plus your own fears. So you're better to have your ducks in a row before you jump into it.
Yeah, and really consider, do you need to jump into it? Is it
Well, and that's the
actually
thing too,
gonna
right?
make a difference? And that's I'm all about not jumping into things you don't have to jump into. Now, at the same time, life experiences, I'm known for jumping into stuff that
Mhm.
people say, "What are you crazy?" And that's usually my sign that I'm onto a good thing, right? Like that's typically when I'm doing stuff that's going to make big differences. But it's again, the difference is going to be made to me, for me. I'm not messing with anybody else at that point. So I feel I can take that leap.
Well, that's
But
exactly it, right?
yeah, but you really need to be clear on these kind of things so that you're not just throwing energy into a black hole because it goes somewhere. And as you said,
Yeah,
somebody's going to pick it up. So do you really want to feed what you don't know? Maybe not.
yeah. It's funny, that gave me kind of the vision in my head that people with lots of money who have like large organizations are just sending people out to absorb energy in the environment and bringing it back to them to use.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I think we do an awful lot of misplaced energy these days. And he's a sort of mundane world. And I
Mhm.
use the word mundane meaning like muggles, right? It's
Right,
it's it's literally everybody who's not involved in being wizard,
right.
witch, shaman, any of those things, right? Um, and I kind of had my thread taken away from me there a little bit. Whoa, that'll come back.
Sorry.
No, I kind of saw it go. It was like,
No,
no,
right.
you're not going to go there right now.
Right. It's
Yes,
not
you
the time
can.
for
Come
it.
back.
But I always think the word muggles did make me laugh though, because I do use it sometimes when I'm frustrated. I'm like, freaking muggles. Why can't you get this to your head? If you do this, the energy's going to be that way. You're messing with mine, which you're bringing, but you're not seeing it. So there's that.
Yeah,
It's actually the joy of being aware of flow, right? Because then you walk into a situation, it's like, why is the energy bouncing everywhere? Can we focus?
yeah, yeah. That's so funny though. I literally saw that thread go and it was like, nope, you're not going to go there right now.
Yeah,
So interesting.
that
I was
happens
fine
to
to
me too.
mention the word shaman, and then
Yeah.
it was just like, no, we're not going to talk about that.
That's
Okay.
interesting.
It
Like,
is.
and that's part of what we're doing in this show, right? It's the what comes, what influence can happen while we're talking and see what's going on.
Hmm.
So the fact that that got pulled away from you is interesting. Makes me
It is.
wonder if that's for later or if it's not for now. Or, and just so we can sound completely crazy to the listeners, did someone pull it away? Did someone say, I
I
don't want Michaela talking about this right now, or I want to keep this a secret?
Yeah, well, I'm doing some training right now that may have been involved, but I literally saw that thread kind of go,
Oh.
no, you're not doing that. And I don't know if it'll come back later,
Well,
but
it's like
we'll
this.
see.
When I talk about my twin flame,
Uh-huh.
there's things not to be spoken about because of the stuff we did. And it's kind of too advanced for what we're trying to accomplish here. So there's things I want to like jump into and say, this is why it was like it took 20 years. Because why would it take 20 years to channel to do something, right? And then if the person died, why are you still channeling? Well, because there's stuff. stuff I can't go into because I'm told not to talk about it by the spirits I work with. But it's like, well, but since I was allowed to say it and I wasn't stopped and I didn't have it pulled away, it's almost something to consider since we're on this. Life is more than just this body, and your existence as the person you are in this body isn't quite done when you die.
Agreed.
You have some time before you become the next thing. And so you're basically recapping your life. So even if you were connected to someone like I was and they died, that connection isn't done yet until they move on or until what you needed to do together as twin flames is done.
Hmm.
And so that ended for at Christmas for me, our connection as twin flames. Although, just to channel for a second, according to her, technically we're done, but since I was there for her, she wants to stay around for me. So
Okay.
unless that was why he was taken away, I don't know.
And here's the interesting thing too, is that might sound crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody might have come across this podcast and they're like, who are
Right.
these nutcases talking? And yet the same people will maybe watch a football game where, the football player scores, for example,
Right.
and then, they're doing all these symbols
Mm-hmm.
to somebody up in heaven or whatever. And
Yeah.
and they'll talk about this person's watching over me, and you can use that kind of language, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
It's just, okay, that to me sounds a little weird. That to me is, the idea that somebody's sitting on a cloud watching over you, it's a bit strange. But the idea that a disincorporated being, in other words, not in a body,
Right.
is still there, why wouldn't they be? Where else are they going to
Yeah.
be? Sure. So it's just a different take on the same theme, I think. And when we label the one that's not ours as being crazy.
Well,
So,
that's the thing. You know, and it's funny because it's bringing a flood of a whole bunch of conversation. And I don't know how much this is going to fit in the episode, but there's got to be someone who needs to hear this somewhere because it is part of the conversation. But so I had two relatives. They're both dead now, but before they died, every time something happened to them, I would know because I felt their symptoms.
mhm.
All my grandmothers are dead now, but one of them, she had a massive heart attack, and I woke up and I was like, "Oh, what's going on here?" Like, you know, kind of a thing. And then to find out, oh yeah, your grandma, she had a heart attack. She didn't die that time, but but it spurred on a bunch of other things. And then I had an uncle who he passed from cancer, and they had given him the wrong medication or the wrong amount, and him too. He had kind of like heart attack symptoms. And I woke up in the middle of the night, and I'm like, and I could feel his presence, and I'm like, "Holy crap, what's going on?" Like, you know. So I think either I got a call or I called someone. I said, "Okay, what's going on?" Like last night there,
Mhm.
I got quite the visitation. What's happening? He goes, "Oh, well, last night we thought he was going to die because he had like what felt like a massive heart attack, but it was his medication." Like, oh, it's funny. So what continues to go back to my grandmother. After that happened to her, I said to her, I talked to her, and I said, "You know what?" I said, "I'm going to teach you some stuff, so that you can communicate with me when you need to." And then she never grasped it consciously, but when she died, and she wants to like she knew how to channel through me when she died. So when she was dead, she was like, "Okay, you should call me Danny." She said, "Danny, I need you to do this, Danny." "Okay, wait, hold on, turn on." And she could like puppet me at that point. I was like I get it, I gave to you, and she's a very strong woman, like very willful and strong of mind. So it was like when I gave her the opportunity, because before she was dying, part of her subconscious was like, "Okay, let's try this." And it's a weird topic to talk about because consciously she wasn't aware of it. But I'm like,
Mhm.
well, your subconscious is really, really taking advantage of the situation.
Yeah, yeah. No, I know someone actually who she says that when her father died, she knew because he came to visit her and let her know that he was leaving now. And she phoned her sister and said, okay, what's happening? And the sister said, oh, he died like 10 minutes ago, sort of thing. And she said, well, I know that because he came here,
Yeah.
but
You
what
told
else
me,
is
I got it.
happening? And,
Yeah.
and and everybody else is like, what do you mean you know that? And she said, yeah, he came and he said these things. And you always risk sounding like a lunatic and
Hmm.
somebody's gonna say, okay, you need meds, you're delusional. But it's typically what we do when we don't understand something, right? Is label it as being
Right.
incorrect, wrong in some way. So, again, if you're listening to this podcast, hopefully it's because you're looking for something that maybe we can provide.
Yeah.
And all labels aside, right?
Hmm. Well, and it might be because like it wasn't really a story I was going to share because of how great it sounds. Because like I said, I checked with my grandparents. I wanted to make sure, is she aware of this because she's doing something? So I wanted to see if she was aware on a level. But like I said, when she passed, it was like she was there. She was front and center. She said, Danny, I need you to do this. I need this happening. We'll talk to that person, give that person a hug, do this for that person. It's like, all right, whatever you need, I got you. But she knew and was like almost to the point of get out of my way. I got your body. Let's go. I was like, whoa, there, it's my body. Let's go. I'll do it for you.
Right.
Yeah,
You've had your shot.
yeah. But it was funny, yeah. And I wonder who needs to hear that because it
Yeah.
was coming up because you were stopped and it started bubbling up and I'm like, okay, it wasn't something I was
Wow.
going to talk about because I don't know if we're far enough into the podcast yet to have what do you call it to have produced that much trust in the listeners.
Yeah, well, I really have no idea who's listening to it or what they're doing with it, but I'm just giving out what
Mm-hmm.
comes up, and that's, we'll see how that lands for
Yeah.
people. But yeah, it's it's interesting to see sort of how this works between us as well, because sometimes, I never know what I'm going to say next. It just goes with the conversation. And I see quite often you'll suddenly get ooh, that brought something up.
Yeah.
You know, part one of this, it was me that was kind of lit up and full of, oh,
Mm-hmm.
next there's this and then there's that. And I was on that roll until that thread got pulled. And now
Yeah.
I'm like, okay,
Well,
where did
yeah.
that go?
Yeah. Well, when when I was thinking about it, well, even yesterday and today, there was like, there's all kinds of things that we could be touched upon, and then the spirits I work with were like, yeah, let's like do the part two. Come on, let's go. There's things to be shared here. Like there's things about the flow. I guess they're on the kick. They're on that kick right now about the flow and how it affects people and how, in fact, another thing to be thrown in. They must really want. There's somebody listening who really needs to hear something, or a group of people because they want me to bring up again. I've spoken to a bunch of people about this, and probably you too. When you ask for something, ask for what you really want so that they can make it happen in a way that doesn't interfere with everyone else's stuff. And the example, I have a real one, this discussion I had with my mother about she wanted $10 million so she can help her grandkids. I'm like, how about this? Figure out what you need to do to help your grandkids instead of asking for $10 million because that $10 million has to come from somewhere. That means someone else doesn't have those amounts of money. So try to put it in where like more people can be helped in one shot, you know? Like if you can pull everyone to one location and they do something that helps everybody, that's easier than each individual getting something for themselves. The more you can tie the flows together, the more the things will flow together, the easier it is to accomplish things rather than having to stop a flow so that you can get more, you know?
Right, and it does work much better if what you're looking for affects in a good way, like
Yeah,
helps a number of other people.
right. If it creates a
Typically, when
domino effect of helping others,
yeah,
if it creates a
that's
domino effect rather than you having to pull, do the whole Sisyphus stone thing up a hill, better to have
and
the domino effect than the.
and the thing with helping other people too is that there's some real magic in that too. I mean, just try focus on helping someone in a real way, and I'll
Mhm.
define that in a moment. But you help that person, you get the reward immediately. You feel amazing because you can see that something has benefited that person. Now, I want to say what I don't mean by that.
Mhm.
Somebody needs to hear this too. And that's again, it's the social media thing that seems to be coming up today. But you'll see where someone goes to give a homeless person a haircut, or they're going to feed that person, or they give them new clothes or something, and they're being filmed the whole time they're
Right.
doing that. And there's a whole lot of, look how good I am helping this person. And that comes from an awful place. energetically speaking.
Mm,
That's horrible because it's a transaction. It's not an act of charity in any way, shape, or form. It's a transaction, and you have not got a willing partner. The homeless person that you're doing this thing for
mm,
may or may not have wanted that, but they certainly have not given their permission to be used in a way that makes you look good. So that public display thing, that is problematic. I see more and more people doing it, and I think it's a very sticky energy of business transaction. But the
yeah.
key there, business isn't a bad thing, but when you have somebody who's unwilling or non-consensual
Hmm.
in that interaction, that is problematic. So that's not what I mean by helping someone else.
Right.
And if you want to go help homeless people,
Yeah.
that's very, very cool. Just don't take a camera.
I'm gonna say this. Whoever needs it, I'm facing about a little bit, no, a little bit south of west because of where I am. Like it's not quite. This is not quite true south. It's a little bit off, but
Okay.
I'm getting like a pull towards this direction. I'm pointing to a bit to the north for those of you because you can't see me. Like it's when you were talking, it was like wow, like I can really feel it. So I think whoever's energy is opening up is kind of in that direction from me.
Okay. Yeah, I felt that very strongly that needed to be said
Mm,
and really feel into that because that is not a good energy at all. Even, you can feel that even looking at it online. It just doesn't feel good. It's a
yeah,
it's a misplaced energy where you are convincing yourself that you're doing it for the other person, but totally
mm,
not. And you need to be clear on your motives for things. Lack of clarity there can lead to all kinds of misdirection. And Trickster's definitely going to come play with that one. No question.
yeah,
And that doesn't end well.
no. So it's a little bit, sorry, it's a little bit north of west. I just checked on where I was actually facing.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out someone northeast of me, I think. That's where I'm getting kind of a pull. It's not so much
Interesting.
there now, but it was while we were talking. And I know no one's seeing this, so maybe that's I don't know, it's a flow thing happening. Yeah, because I don't feel it anymore. But it was
That's
like really
okay.
strong.
Maybe that was what they needed some clarity on and
Yeah,
got it, but it came through as something I needed to point out that, if I'm working with a client, for example, and they get a breakthrough on where they're emotionally eating, and then I can give them a behavior to replace that with, because I am a behavior analyst as well, then I see that work and I know it's a toolkit that works in the mundane world, and so that is like soul food.
mm,
That gives you energy, and that's great because I'm doing the thing without expecting, and we're not talking money, paid clients,
yeah,
and what have you. Sure, that's an exchange of energy, but in that moment, when you've done something that landed for that person and helped them, that is its reward. And that is a creation of more energy coming your
yeah,
way. That's good stuff.
yeah.
The thing where you use another person's misfortune to look
Mm.
good, that is dark energy right there. That's not so good.
Well, it's and you mentioned it now that I'm not being pulled to the side. A good deed has its own reward, energetically speaking. Absolutely. I think about how many times, not that I've been in arguments, but sometimes it's been an argument where people's like, why are you doing this for that person? And I'm like, I don't know if you can feel it, but I'm doing this. There's definitely an energy. And every time I do something to help, it's like I'm getting energy back. Like you may not like that person, and that person may not be the best person in the world, but there's a very strong, this needs to happen. And there's a reinvestment in energy here going on. And I'm like, if, you know, it, not that it becomes an addiction, but that feeling like when you feel the energy, it's like, listen, I know you guys aren't picking it up, but what is here is very real and very, very strengthening.
It is what we all want fundamentally, whether we realize it or not. That's kind of soul food. It is what makes us feel good and energized and able to do things. You'll often hear the type of question, what lights you up? Well, that's exactly what we're talking about. That energy lights you up. Where are you getting it from? What does it for you? And do you recognize that? And typically, when we go inward in a material way, like, ooh, I want all that money, or I want all that fame for me, or whatever it is, that isn't where it's at. You need the other person in that exchange. We are creatures of exchange. It's not working in isolation doesn't really
Mm.
do so well.
No, it's true. You know what? Once again, this is definitely for someone.
Okay.
So if you're listening, whoever it is, if you're listening to this and this rings a bell to you in any way, shape, or form, either message me or I don't know if you mind if they message you if they feel more comfortable messaging you, Michaela.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah.
Message one of us. Let us know if it's you, or go to the subreddit or whatever. But like this is like really strong because there's times where I'm thinking like, are they saying to stop the episode or are they saying like? But then I'm like, well, no, I'm not. There's no compulsion to push the button to stop the episode or say anything to stop the episode. So it's like it's almost like there's a listening happening.
Cool. Well, I
I don't
hope
know.
it's helping.
Yeah. But it feels like obviously the person like in their material sense, you know, probably aren't aware right now. And then when they hear it, the episode, they'll go, oh. But right now, whoever it is, they're listening spiritually.
Right.
Because
That's
I'm feeling it. I'm feeling something. Someone's listening. Someone needs this conversation.
cool.
I mean, it
Oh,
doesn't hurt me to have this conversation. It makes me feel better, but there's someone listening. Okay, people see this. This is the weird thing. And this is why for years I never spoke about these things because it's like having this conversation out of nowhere is like, huh, well, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. What are you doing? Meaning someone's listening.
right.
But yeah.
Still, we have people who are psychics, we have people who read tarot cards, we have people who do all kinds of things. And there's always going to be somebody that says, that's not real, that's
Mm-hmm.
crazy. And there will be others that say, I'm going to live my life based on this. You know, Someone who came to mind just then was Adolf Hitler, who used occult and
Yeah.
used all kinds of tarot and what have you
Mm-hmm.
in order to make his decisions. Like that was a whole thing. Even the
Yeah.
swastika is a symbol that's reversed.
Well, and just as an aside, like it kind of makes me feel bad because there's a lot of cultures who use the swastika for protection.
Right.
And even up until it was used in World War II, any building older than World War II, a lot of them have swastikas on them for
Yeah,
protection.
that's just facing the other way. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a symbol in Buddhism.
Yeah. Buddhism, what is it? Buddhism, Hinduism, I think it's Greek too. Who else? There's like, and I think even certain well, indigenous people to the Americas use some of them use it too. So
Yeah,
it's like,
that's in a lot of places,
yeah.
but he was very much focused on energies other than the ones you
Hmm.
could see and directing him places. So, well, I don't know. That just came up, so I said it.
Yeah. Well, and it's really important because I think somebody's listening and someone needs a tutorial apparently. So just because a tool is a tool is a tool.
hmm
How you use it is what makes it good or bad. And it doesn't make the tool good or bad, it makes the use of it good or bad. I'm serious. Somebody's listening.
hmm
It's weird. I've never had a good opportunity to do this before, to just sit down with someone while we're talking and go, no, wait, there's something. Something
Well,
is happening. Something in the ether is happening.
behavior analysis is a science and it's a tool. You work with people to help them change their behavior from what they're
Mhm.
doing to something that's going to work better
Yeah.
for them and for society, right? But it's also a way of manipulating people if you choose to use it that way. I mean, it's basically what I just said. If you're changing somebody's behavior into something different, then that is a manipulation. The
Mhm.
question is, do you do it with their knowledge? Do you do it with their consent? Do you give the tools of behavior analysis to that person to do it for
Right.
themselves? Now, that's my path. I like to let people know exactly what's possible, what's there, what it looks like, why it works. Here are the tools, you go play with them. I don't want the responsibility of manipulating someone using that toolkit. But that's an example of a very strong, a very powerful toolkit. That science is really strong, but how you use it is everything. And you can damage people with that thing.
Hmm.
You really can. And I know a number of adults with autism, for example,
Right.
who had applied behavior analysis used with them when they were younger. And as a result, they now have depression and anxiety.
Hmm.
Why? Because their behavior was forced into a shape that didn't fit them.
Right.
And behavior analysis was the method that that was done with. Now, I'm going to offer that chances are that was done with the best of intentions, and people just didn't realize how damaging that was. But the key is that the tool is so powerful, it was possible to do that. Some people still want to do that. I am not over their number, but the tool is powerful. But it's also objective and neutral. It's not a bad thing. ABA is not bad. You will have people tell you it is, but no, it's not bad. The question is, how are you using it?
Right.
It's science. So
Yeah.
that's, again, the attention is everything.
Hmm. And it ties us back to what we were starting off with the idea of using a love spell or any kind of spell that manipulates someone's behavior as a tool. If you use it, and like I say, if you use it appropriately, you're fine. If you're trying to create a permanent change, then you're spending your energy and you're probably doing something. If the other person's energy doesn't naturally flow that way and you're trying to make a permanent change, then you're always going to be spending energy to maintain that new flow.
And
But
again,
if you use it properly,
it depends on why you're doing it too, and whether you're doing it with their cooperation. And I think that's my thread coming back right now, is in the
yeah.
mundane world, this is a toolkit, part of a toolkit that you can use to help people for what they want. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's key to be working on what the other person wants and not your agenda. And that's really important too, and clarity on where that is, because there are a number of behavior analysts that will tell you, well, this is the right thing to do, and this is how we're going to do it, and by the book, it's supposed to go this way. And all that's very well and good on paper, just like communism is great on paper, but it doesn't work when you apply it to
Right.
people. That's the issue. It
Yeah.
does not work because people don't follow those linear patterns.
Well, and that's the thing, right? It
Yeah.
becomes insert dictator here at one. There's a danger point in communism where a dictator can easily come in, and that's usually what happens before it passes. Because we've
Well, it
talked about
does
this a little bit, yeah.
because it cannot work as it's laid out. It looks great, but it can't translate to human beings. That's the problem.
Well,
Because
that's the thing, right?
people have free will, and that's where it gets messed up, right? But the thing with using a toolkit that involves science, for example, you have to be really aware of whose agenda are you running here and what's the end point. Because, for example, if you wanted me to help you change a behavior that's not serving you, okay, what do you want that to look like? What would you rather be doing? What kind of end result would you rather have? And that might not be something I think is the
Hmm.
best, but if it's what you want and it's not harming somebody, then why would I question that?
Right.
And that's the key, is agendas seems to be a very important issue today.
Yes.
It's like, whose is it, really,
Yep.
honestly? Deep down, whose agenda are you running? Is that spell that you want to do for your benefit, or are you actually trying to do something for somebody else? And do you have their consent? Consent is also a theme here.
Hmm.
Does the other person know that that's what you're doing? Did they want it? This
Hmm.
is important. Don't go doing stuff to people that they don't want, you haven't asked. That's really important. I'm gonna get that big time right now.
Well, yeah, that's
Hmm.
because I don't know if you heard that there's some blasting going on down the street, but what was I going to say? So I've talked about consent before in the wizard sense, and it's not enough to say no. You have to be firm in your no, as in you can't allow it to happen. Just like in someone can't help you just because you said yes. You have to open the passage to allow them in. So if you keep the passage closed, but you ask for help, you're not going to get it. And if you say don't come in, but then you throw the door open in the
Mm.
in the spiritual world, that's consent. I think it's a clear distinction to be made in this case because people need to understand that saying no but not really meaning it, because a lot of times, right, in ourselves we're afraid to do things. So if someone like, I don't know if this will turn out to be the best example, but I'll give it anyways. A love spell, right? Since that's the topic. Someone may be afraid to approach someone, although that person wants to be approached and that person wants to approach, but they don't have the courage to approach them. I would argue if you're going to cast a love spell to get things started, fine. But then that spell better be removed once that hurdle is is passed.
See, I
But
would still
even then,
choose a different thing.
yeah.
I would choose a different path there and say if that's the issue,
Mm,
then you want something to open the flow of communication. It's
right.
a flow problem
Mm-hmm.
there. And then when that flow of communication can happen, you see if where's it going to go? Like, is that correct for you? Because you might it gets difficult if both sides are thinking certain ways and nobody's communicating. So you
Right.
kind of need that
And
communication
that's what I
piece
was going to say, because that was going to be my caveat,
first.
like you described, is the I still wouldn't really recommend it,
Yeah.
but at the very least, both people want an outcome. But where I would have said, where my caveat would have come in is, but they still don't have the courage to act on it, so they're letting something hold them back. So it's like that you can do the spell, and this would be pretty much like, I mean, everyone's consenting, but where you might be in error is the fact that these two people obviously aren't ready to communicate, or there's something, and it's the communication you should be working on. And I understand that, okay, the spell then breaks the barrier for communication at that moment, but you still have to deal with what built that barrier in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah. I would just take a slightly different approach because I'm very concerned about
Mhm.
blurring the lines. So for me, that
Yes.
would be a straight up,
Mhm.
let's open some communication here
Right.
and take
Well,
that
that would be
approach
the
and then
ideal way
see
of doing
what's
it,
next.
for sure.
See what's next, see what's
Yeah.
possible. And that way you're not messing with free will, which is my biggest concern,
Mhm.
is not getting in somebody else's path and redirecting them.
Mhm.
I am very keen on not doing that because I don't feel that I have the right to do that, and I don't want anybody doing that to me. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, that's like so you need boundaries spiritually as
Mhm.
well as in a mundane world. You need boundaries on that, and that's like what will you and won't you do, and those rules, those ideas can be reevaluated, but you need some clarity on what is and isn't okay. And sometimes, the person listening probably needs to figure out
Mhm.
where they stand on boundaries and what they're willing to push and what they don't want to push. And that's a question of personal choice, but also personal responsibility. Got to be prepared to deal with what comes back. And
Yes.
that's simply how it is.
Well, that's the thing. The more power you get, the more you have to be responsible for that power.
Sure.
It's funny because even just in the mundane sense, if you're giving someone a responsibility, you have to give them the appropriate freedom to engage in that responsibility. So, like, and I find it's interesting because some people are willing to give responsibilities, but they're not willing to give that person the freedom to execute their responsibility.
See, I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to argue that's not real responsibility then. That is expectation
Mm-hmm.
disguised as responsibility. So what they're saying is you have to do or be this
Mm-hmm.
way because I'm telling you to, and it's my expectation, but I'm going to call it
Right.
your responsibility so you feel you have to do it. And
Yeah.
that's a manipulation that's
Well, yes, that's
kind
in
of
the end what
subtle.
it
People do
becomes.
it.
Yeah.
People do it all the time, but if you're given something that you're told you have a responsibility and
Mm-hmm.
yet you don't have the freedom to use that,
Mm-hmm.
then you can stand your ground and say, okay, what I'm hearing is an expectation. Let's
Right.
revisit this. And one of the
Absolutely.
things that that brings to mind is, again, as a behavior analyst, I've worked with a lot of teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to point out to parents that teenagers are adults in training. And when you're training this adult to
Mm-hmm.
be the kind of person you'd like them to be, one of the key tools they need is the ability to make a decision.
Right.
How are they going to do that? But by practicing. Now, that means, and this relates directly to what you were just saying, that means that when you give that teenager a decision to make, you then have to let them make the decision.
That's right.
You can't take it from them and say, no, that's not the right decision, or this is a better way, or no, you can't do that, you have to do this. You gave them something that you then took away, and that's not fair. It's not a training, it's not
Mm-hmm.
a help to that person who is in the process of becoming. Teenagers are a hot mess because they've got hormones going on, they've got different stages of development in all the different realms happening all at the same time, and they're trying to navigate the world between childhood and adulthood. And then they get expectations thrown on top of them, and a lot of have tos, but not really how tos. So, helping that person have space
Right.
to become, to learn for themselves while they're at home and hopefully in a safe environment is the best thing you can do. They have to be able to follow through on those decisions and learn what was a good decision and what was a bad decision. I mean, I would put money on it that your best learning in your life has come from those decisions that went sideways,
Yep.
because that's how it works for people. It worked for me too. You don't remember the lessons that other people tell you anywhere near as much as you remember the time you screwed up,
Right.
right? That's where the gold is. So your teenager needs to have that gold at home, and they need to have it genuinely. They also learn then that you trust them, and you trust who they're becoming, and you trust their ability to make decisions, which builds confidence, efficacy, and all those things you want in
Mm-hmm.
an adult. So we typically go awry on the whole decision making thing.
Right. Oh, I'm just gonna interrupt for a second. Whoever was listening, okay, you're probably not aware that you did this, but someone said thank you
Okay, cool.
because there was like another rush of energy and there was like a thank you on it, and I'm like, okay,
Nice.
yeah. So this is weird, but this is how my life is. Just for anyone
Okay.
listening, if you ever wonder, you ever see me stop sometimes and do something, it's like this stuff is happening. There's interactions going around all the time. It's like picking up it's like being able to tune into radio waves, right? You're picking up conversations everywhere. You're like all tuned to this
Right,
stuff. And it's like, okay, isolating the frequency, I can hear what you're saying. Okay. But yeah,
right.
whoever it is said thank you. And I'm like, you know what? Again, if you think this is you, please message one of us because I really want to know. I want some confirmation on this because it's pretty strong from where I'm
Cool.
sitting.
And hey, if you want more on teenagers and stuff,
Yeah.
I can talk about teenagers all day. I think they're
Mm.
amazing human beings
Well, you
because they
know,
are in the most difficult transition of life that there is, which is between childhood and adulthood,
mhm.
get hampered by well-meaning parents and a society that has some cockeyed priorities, frankly. So
Yeah,
I'm here for teenagers. Like I love working with them. I can see what they've got going on, and it's tough. It's a big task.
absolutely. And you know what? This is also for teenagers, but it could be for anyone. But since you said teenagers, this actually really now sticks in my head. Because I was also going to do the opposite of what I said, the reverse too of freedoms. When you have a freedom, so if you have, and we'll just keep the whole theme of the spells, if you have the freedom to cast spells and you have spirits willing to cast spells, and you're not doing it for malign, and you're not by nature a person who does things for malevolent reasons, then you're given an ability, you're given a freedom to be able to cast these, but it's up to you to give yourself the responsibility to now take responsibility for your actions. I always tell people the tyrant doesn't come in by storming the walls and forcing things to happen. The tyrant is invited because usually someone has abused their freedoms, and now it's like okay, we have to now manage these people who aren't curtailing their freedoms, or at least seem to not be managing their freedoms. So
Yeah, I mean, to quote Spider-Man, I can't believe I'm doing
Yeah.
it, but with,
Great
great,
power.
what is it? Great power comes great
Yeah.
responsibility. But that is a very true thing.
Hmm.
And having the ability to create shifts that involve
Hmm.
other people, of course, that's 100% huge responsibility. And yeah, and how you deal with that is your choice, but it will affect you as well as others. So,
Yeah.
be wise about that. And I, on this planet, we really need to be more hands off with each other
Hmm.
than we typically are, and give each other space and grace to become who we are, and just accept that about people instead of continually trying to change how that other person shows up.
Yeah.
If you don't like the way that person presents themselves, well, either look at yourself and see what that's triggering in you, or just go somewhere else. Don't be in that environment until you can be, because
Hmm.
it's not your role to change how another person is in this world. They're on their own journey. They got their own movie going on, and you happen to be in the same space for a while, but it's not your business to change their flow. Taking it full circle to the first part of this whole thing. But yeah,
You know
but
what?
it's kind of nice not to have that responsibility
It
for
is.
others too.
Trying to think, because now there's a whole thing happening. So I think this is actually the spot to end the episode, I
Okay.
think. And I think a good assignment for the 10 for this episode, part one, part two. One, if you're the person who we were getting the information about, definitely contact one of us or share it, whatever. For the rest of you, I want to know what you felt when listening to this episode. Did you feel anything? Did you get a sense of the flow? Did we make enough of a connection for you guys actually to have a flow, a sense of the flow? Because it's an important thing and it can happen. I remember I went for a reading one time and I actually shanghaied the flow of information. And the person giving me the reading pretty much gave me gibberish, but I had somehow hacked the connection and got everything I needed. So I'm curious if this, because at least I know, well, because Michaela got herself, the thread, and I got my flow was interrupted a few times because there was something else happening. So I'm curious to see if anyone else was affected by this episode.
Yeah.
I'm really curious about that. Sometimes, like, I don't know how big of an event it was. I know it affected me specifically, and Michaela got some of it too to kind of place things where they needed to be. But I'm really curious if anyone sensed anything.
Yeah.
And two,
Good
by the
to
same
know.
token, yeah,
Because that was certainly a range of topics that were coming
yeah,
up. And as I said earlier, I don't plan what I'm going to say next. It just
right,
what is, and that's kind of how I tend to operate.
right.
Podcasts, talking. I did a 20-minute talk at UCLA. I had none of it planned, and I didn't know what I was going to say from one minute to the next. But I had one person in the audience
Mhm.
that I focused in on, and that person, who I hadn't met before, gave me a lot of energy feedback that was
Mhm.
really helpful. And I just rolled with it, and it ended up being the best talk I've ever done. And I had no plan for it, none. I just went with it. In fact, I was
Yeah.
sick. I had gastroenteritis,
All right.
and I'd just come back from a trip with that illness. And then I flew to do the UCLA talk, and I didn't know if I was going to get through it, let alone anything else. I certainly hadn't planned it. I just figured, I'm just going to do
Yeah.
this thing and see what rolls. And like I said, it was best one I've done. So that was pretty wild.
Yeah.
But going with the flow entirely and this one person's energy back and forth was really good.
Yeah. I think that's really what we hit here with this episode. Like I
Cool.
can't shake it anyways. So we'll end on this note. And so yeah, so I gave the assignment. So we'll end it here. So, to everybody listening, till next time, remember do this assignment because this one is actually I think this is very important to do it, especially if you're the person who this episode seems to have been for. So I'll say goodbye,
And I'll say, see you next time.
and so we'll see you guys next episode. So have a good week. Pay attention to your flow around you because somebody out there, this is your episode.
Yeah, yeah,
All
I
right.
agree.